everyone, welcome back, or thank you for tuning in to the Iconist podcast. I'm a little bit tongue twisted today because I'm very excited on the guest that we have on board with today's episode. I'm having my geek moment. Bear with me. Thank you. So we'll get through it real quick. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Barry 3D Carter for Deep Dark Delicious. Hey, thank you for tuning in. On my side, the man, the myth, the legend. If he was a transformer, he'd be a subwoofer. Who am I talking about? The one and only
DJ Rod C. Welcome in, everyone. We're having another wonderful day. As I always say, the icon is... I can't tell you. Paperwork told me I can't say it yet. I'll leave it for Barry. Barry.
You're going to see him soon enough. I know there's a curtain over his window, but we're going to see it soon enough. So here it comes down. We're going to get through everything so we can get to it. First and foremost, support the books, support the books, support the books. So please go out and support the books that support this show. Go to Check Swings out in Montreal, that comic book store you can't turn around and miss when you go in there. Tell Trevor we said hi. And when you go out here to Ontario, go over to Kitchener and check out Wow Comics. Tell Wes and the guys we said hi. Also, keep your eyes open for Brandy Ford's magazine, The Writer and the Wit. If issue 1 is out already, so please subscribe. You see the links down below. And keep an eye out for A Touch of Gray Matter, the comedy troupe I'm a part of with Dave Zokolowski and Zolf Ali, along with myself. We have a show coming April 14th at Stonehookers Brewery. Please come out, 8 o'clock start time. It's going to be a good time with with special guest Larry Smith. And last but not least, the one and only, the one that makes us look so pretty. If you need any digital media art done, you know who to turn to. Who is it got to be, Rod?
J Bird Digital Art.
J Bird Digital Arts. If you tell him you heard about him on the Iconist podcast, he will give you a discount on any templates, logos, anything you need to have done worldwide. That's how we do. Now, on today's show, we have a special guest. I'm going to remove the curtain so you're going to see him. Please give a big thank you, round of applause in your heads for Chris from Comic Tropes.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. Nice to be here. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, sir. The honor's ours. Oh my gosh.
Right? Chris, as I told you off before the camera started rolling, been watching your show for years. Because of your show, we have this show as it's the influence of, hey, during the pandemic, want to do something positive. Saw what you were doing. Yeah. And
that's
right up
awesome.
our alley.
That's great, guys. Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to be humble and nervous about taking credit, but I'm glad you're doing something creative, spending your time like this. I think it's awesome. I think that this is a great use of people's time. There's low barrier to entry to doing a show. Do something you're passionate about, meet new people. It's great. I love doing this stuff.
I agree with you. So we're going to get right into it. So I know we got a couple of things we want to touch base on. We're going to touch base to find out, well, who's Chris? Who's Chris?
Who the hell am I?
Who are you, Chris?
If you say it that way, Chris, yeah. Who are you, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, because really, I see Chris weekly on his channel, Comic Tropes. And I see what Chris talks about. I know Chris is very informed, he's very knowledgeable, and he's passionate. And I love everything I've seen. But I don't know Chris. So we will find out. And we will find out what Chris, we're going to learn about Chris and what Chris has coming up. It's something really big. So huge step.
I'm an open book today. I'm grateful to have your audience's ears and eyes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, honestly, thank you. I can't really stress that enough, like how important this is. I'm excited. It's like meeting someone like, get the cameras, get the paparazzi. So we're going to start off. So Chris, Comic Tropes, how long have you been doing your channel for?
Yeah. Solid question. Let's see. Right around, I think a little over 6 years, actually, which, I say that, and that actually seems like a big number. It doesn't feel like I've been doing it for a long time because it's fun. I mean, it's work, but it's fun.
Right.
So yeah, but that is 6 years. That's not nothing.
No, not at all. And I mean, anyone that's been a fan of your show, you've been very open, generally speaking, with how your life path has gone. And
definitely.
you know, and I think that's what makes you a lot more tangible as a person, which is great. This is why I was very excited to have you. You're not just a character, you're a real person.
Yeah, that's true. I don't exactly like play a character or like play myself up too much. Although like some of my instincts, like in real life, I joke around a lot more than I kind of even do on the show. But I guess I actually tone myself down a little for my show, which is probably the opposite of what a lot of people do. Because I just like to focus a little bit more on the material. I try to put some of myself into it and do the occasional silly thing. But like, you know, mostly I'm focusing on talking about comic book techniques and history. It's just my favorite storytelling medium. So it's very easy for me to always find a creator or a behind the scenes bit of history to talk about.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. So now here's another question for you.
Okay.
Everyone has their moment, right? Now I'm going to age myself later on, but when I was younger, did I watch cartoons? Yes. Did I buy comic books? Yes. But the one that stuck with me where I actually said, oh, and the light bulb went over my head was, and it's weird, I still remember it. It was issue 8 of Micronauts, volume 1.
Oh, right on. Michael Golden art, right?
Exactly.
Very, very underrated artist that was influential to a lot of other artists, but not necessarily like a superstar with the fans. I think he was respected by fans, but not necessarily a superstar with fans. But I love him. I think Michael Golden's awesome.
Absolutely. And that's a book that stuck with me, right? Because then it opened me to Micronauts. And I remember it was on the spinner rack at my corner store. And I remember buying Micronauts. I bought an issue of Shogun Warriors. Oh, yeah. And then I picked up the Legion of Superheroes. This is after Superboy left, but you know, and I remember the cover, but Micronauts number 8, what stuck with me, because then I remember going with my parents, and then you see the toys at the you know, at one of these stores, and I'm like,
yeah.
And that was it. Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, that was this like sort of brief window when Marvel got like heavily into trying to do all these licensed books like you're talking about. They also had like Godzilla for like a year, 2 years, and then really shortly after what you're talking about was when they did Transformers and G.I. Joe, which each had respectable runs.
Exactly. So here's my question. What was that book for you? What was one book that you remembered kind of down the rabbit hole for you?
Super similar, actually, Barry. We might not be too far apart in age or something, but like it was an issue of Transformers. I was pretty young. I had a paper route, and I would finish like near this convenience store. And I went in one day, probably to get like candy or something. I was pretty young. We're talking like maybe like 5th grade, and I see like a comic book. Which I knew what comics were sort of, but I had never really bought one for myself. And I see Transformers, and I love those toys at that age. It was probably even younger than 5th grade now that I'm thinking of it. But anyway, and I was just like, oh, cool. And I got it. It was okay. But it was still interesting enough that like the next week I came back to that store and I was like, well, I'll try something else. I'll try G.I. Joe. And I remember that was actually a pretty darn good comic, that like that had a story that was like way more serious than what I was used to out of the cartoons.
Yes.
At the time, you're like, oh, cool. This is edgy and dark. It wasn't, but it was darker than like the cartoon. And then I was still hungry for more. So like the following week, I started on Spider-Man, and that was the first issue of the Death of Kraven storyline, which was a really, really strong one. Had artwork by Mike Zeck, who made a huge impression on me at that time. So the artist that like first caught my eye was probably Mike Zeck. Okay,
so Mike Zeck is your go-to guy. Well, when I say go-to, I mean he's the one that kind of opened that door for you.
Yeah, he did. And Larry Hama's writing in G.I. Joe. Those are the two things that started to make an impression and get me excited about comics.
Right. And I know you posted earlier about on Twitter about when they had commercials.
Oh, yeah.
G.I. Joe to sell the books. And that was me coming up. It was, you know, when they did a whole commercial for issue 1. I've never seen
an animated commercial. It was a big deal. Like looked really, really cool. Of course, they were able to do that because Hasbro, the toy company, foot the bill for those ads. It wasn't Marvel paying for it, really. It was Hasbro. With the idea, they couldn't do animated. You couldn't do an animated ad for a toy, or like you couldn't at least do it for more than like say 5 seconds or something small like that, right? They were like, well, what if we just use the animation to advertise the comic, knowing that the kids are smart enough that they know that this is a toy, and it'll excite that we don't have to say, buy this new Yeah. You didn't have to quite do that. So that's what they were doing. But all that mattered to me as a kid was it looked really, really cool, and it would get me stoked for the next issue of the comic.
Yeah. They knew how to kind of hook us in there. So, I
me.
mean, I remember going out buying all those toys or trying to ask my parents to buy as much as they were willing to buy for me at the time. And just kind of getting into that genre. But as you put it, like, Bill Metallo, Michael Golden, that art style, the storytelling, very, Star Wars at the time, I was into sci-fi huge. So that was right up my alley. And then I used to like doodle as a kid, but then I started really trying to draw more to emulate that style. I like how he used his darks, the shapes, and then the fact that I could actually hold a space glider figure and know that was Arcturus Rand in the book and be like, okay, I got one in the other. So that was what, I mean, as you can see, I got some kind of art here on my walls. Some of this stuff over here I drew. And that's what, as a pastime, that's what got me into it. So I know you do some drawing.
I do.
Who were some of your influences artistic wise?
I would say when I was younger, like if I'm being realistic, actually, while I was always drawing, I remember starting to try to draw comics in the early 90s. So I was influenced by the guys that founded Image. At the time, that was, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, all those guys, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson. And as an adult, I look back and perceive some of them a little differently. I don't, I'm not trying to critique anybody. I'm just saying that was what excited me as a kid. That's what I was trying to emulate. But because I was reading so many comics at the time, some other early influences shortly after that, like started grounding me a little bit more with guys like, I'm trying to just remember the names. For whatever reason, Alex Toth appealed to me. He designed all the Super Friends and Space Ghost and did a lot of comics.
Yes.
Very clean style, but looked great. Will Eisner, pretty influential guy. That's putting it mildly. Yeah. So there were a bunch, and then it just continues to evolve. Like these days, I'm probably a little bit more influenced by some manga that I'm slowly discovering, both new and old. For some of the energy and storytelling techniques. It depends.
Cool. I know for manga, I'm huge into some of it. Like right now, I'm getting like the trades there. Fist of the North Star.
I am too. I just got a new one just dropped today.
Yes, I'm picking it up. It's on its way. And I like the influence of it. And I said the art style. It's different. It's a lot more grittier. Action.
It's super violent. Let's just call it what it is. It's super violent, but at the same time, there's a little bit of heart and humanity to it. It's a lot like Mad Max, isn't it? Like a post-apocalyptic thing like that, where just the villains are just completely irredeemable. There's not a lot of nuance per se. They're just weird.
It's like, here's Bruce Lee. Here's Bruce Lee in the apocalyptic world.
But
put it together.
If you that character, has all these secret techniques that make him basically almost the Superman of Kung Fu. And a lot of those ideas you start to see in later manga, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Demon Hunter, where they're using breathing techniques to sort of do perfect fighting styles and stuff. So you start to see the influences the more of it you read. And that's kind of fun to sort of be discovering something new to me. It's been there forever, but it's a little newer to me. It's fun to see.
I know. I don't have the names of them, but I know there's some that they really get heavy into martial arts. Like it takes place in the how Shaolin, Shaw Brothers kind of background with their techniques.
Yeah, maybe something like Blade of the Immortal or that. But yeah.
Those are always a lot of fun to have and look and read. And as I said, it's just nice to see how comics are perceived around the world, because when you look at it, there's you have Batman. I mean, for us here, we see North American comics.
Right.
You see how it's drawn, we're used to it. But then when you see how artists in UK draw our superheroes, for lack of a better term, or over in Japan, and you see how they draw Spider-Man and all, you're like, oh, they have them there? First of all, you think it's just the same stories reprinted. And no, they have their own runs, their own storylines.
Totally.
With their own, and that's what's opened my world up even more in, I think, the past few years. So now
absolutely. And then you start looking at the Belgian and French comics, and it's like the line work can be so much more delicate. Italian and Spanish as well. Like the European comic scene is fascinating, and I wish more of that stuff got imported here.
Absolutely. We just did an episode, and it's coming out later on Cyber 6. And
sure, the famous Argentinian comic.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And love that.
Good. Wow, that's a deep pull, guys. A lot of people know that anime, but that's still a pretty good pull. Wow.
Yeah, and it's hard to find in English. There's only a couple of issues that are in English. The rest of it is in, Italian or, in different languages. Also, but the art style, that was really there. It was Carlos. Oh my gosh, I forget his last. Meglia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love his art style. Like, I like the kind of abstract art like that. Bill Schwez.
Sienkiewicz?
Thank you.
Okay.
The one from New
Bill
Mutants.
Sienkiewicz.
I always screw up his last name. I'm terrible with names. He drew New Mutants at one point. He did Elektra.
Yes, he did. Moon Knight. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
So
he's great.
I love.
Dude, can I interrupt with like a quick story about Bill Sienkiewicz?
Go right ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Like, so as I got older, he definitely became somebody that I liked because I see him like a little bit more as like an auteur in film. Like he just does his own thing. And I've been to some conventions and seen him draw, and he uses all sorts of different media. It's not just pencils and inks and stuff. He'll use like whiteout and Copic markers and like just like put layers and layers on top of something until he sees what he's got in his head. It's a very different way of working. And the last New York Comic Con, he was doing a signing at a store, and I'd watched him like up close, but I'd never talked to him. So I got in line to just get something signed by him. And he was like, "Oh, you're the Comic Tropes guy. Why haven't I been on your show yet?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you don't understand. I'm not a celebrity anywhere I go, except sometimes the conventions, but
right.
to get told something like that by somebody that I definitely see him as a hero. It was just very flattering. It was, I'm tooting my own horn. I'm trying to use PC language, but it was nice.
But hey, but all means, I mean, look, you put in 6 years of work for your channel.
Yeah. Still.
Reap the rewards. I mean, you're going there as a fan, and he's turning to you pretty much as a fan.
He was so nice to me. He was so nice, and that's like what you hope. But sometimes it's not the way when you meet like your celebrity heroes. They can be like just I don't know,
aloof. Let's just say that.
Yeah, to say the least. I definitely have stories like that too outside of comics and stuff. But yeah, like that was really really nice. And so someday. He's a very busy guy, but someday I do hope to have him on my show.
Fingers crossed. I'll be watching that episode.
Nice.
Now you turn around, you start Comic Tropes, and I know what was your motivation. What said, one day you're like, sure, all the things I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start a YouTube channel, and then you went with a theme that was different than most comic book shows I've seen, which I like.
Okay, that's interesting. I'll be honest. I never really watched any comic book YouTube before I started my thing, and there's some shows I still won't really watch because I don't want to get influenced by somebody else's opinion. But I watch some. Like I watch some if I'm like, oh, I've already covered that topic, or I'm not going to talk about that, and I'm curious. I'm not saying I ignore these guys. It's so much as I don't want to get influenced. But the reason I started mine. It's not as happy, but I'd been laid off from a job after moving across the country. So I didn't know that many people out here on the West Coast. And I was like, you know what? It's probably going to take me at least a few months until I find my next role. I like to be busy. I'm kind of a workaholic. So I was just like, I got to come up with a personal project. I was like, well, what could I do sort of by myself? I was like, thing I'm most passionate about is comics. Making comics is one thing, but I bet, you know what? Could just do a YouTube show. I could just talk about all this useless comic book knowledge that rattles around up here, has no reason. I go to college and have trouble remembering calculus and advanced Spanish and stuff, but all the comic book stuff stays up here, no problem at all. At all. I don't know how the brain works like that, but yeah, so I've got all this stuff, and I was just like, that's what I'll do. It'll keep me busy. And it definitely took quite a while to slowly grow the audience.
Of course.
But it was always, and it is work, but it was fun work. It was something I always enjoyed thinking about.
Right. So that was more personal project. You wanted to keep busy.
Yeah.
New area, didn't have many friends at the time. So just to kind of instead of sitting around doing nothing, twiddling your thumbs, that's what you started to do.
That's a perfect summary. Yes, Barry, that is what exactly happened.
Chris will be using this in his PR going forward. There we go.
We've proven that Barry can remember things from literally 60 to 90 seconds ago. We've got it documented.
See, it's proven. If my wife says anything, 60 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds, that's it, and I'm done. So wrong. So that's why I found it fascinating. And then you went with a theme. So you didn't watch other shows. You talked comic books. Yeah.
Right. No, you know what? Like, but that wasn't super intentional initially, because like I wasn't coming up with a script for like those first, I don't know, dozen or so episodes. I would literally just pull out a random comic and look at it and say like, well, here's what I know about the writer or the artist. I think that they would like be likely to do this, and this in a lot of their stories. Let's see how many of those I come across.
Yes.
And then it's sort of like over time, it slowly evolved into me more just deciding like, you know, finding these tropes was kind of fun, but I just want to analyze the techniques and the history. So it just sort of evolved. The title of my show doesn't necessarily make perfect sense, but that's okay.
I think it does, because I believe it does, because you're looking for tropes. And I remember your earlier episodes. It's like, okay, here's the issue, and you'll start going through the issue, breaking it down, and it's like, oh, here's this trope, and you would write it on a Post-it, and put it up, and that's trope number one.
Yeah,
and you break it down trope by trope, and
I'd make games out of it for myself. So that was definitely fun. But you also like on YouTube anyway, you have to sort of keep evolving your show. If you do the same thing for too long, I just have seen it happen to other channels. Eventually the viewership goes down. So you have to every once in a while sort of keep evolving it in some way to give like your base audience something new every once in a while. So it's like something I do think about a little bit, like, you know, that you were saying to me backstage, like, oh, you know, I remember your old theme song and stuff, but it's like every once in a while I just want to change that because it just feels stale to me at a certain point.
Yeah, it might feel stale to you, but it's as soon as you hear it, you know what show you're watching.
True. Yeah, I want to have good branding. I want it to be comforting, but I also just don't want it to become old hat. Yes, right. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not right about that. I'm just explaining my logic. And hopefully I am making the right decisions, but it's possible I'm not.
Well, you got the fan base. Now you do. I mean, I do this show here with Rod, and I understand how much work goes behind, like just editing and putting it all together. You're a one-man show. Yeah. Yeah. So, and the editing specifically is very time consuming. That takes up like more than half of like the overall sort of production of making an episode is just the editing. The scripting, not that much. You know, the research is something I'm sort of always reading a bunch of comics for potential episodes in the future, as well as interviews and stuff, and slowly gathering information until something's ready. Right. So that's not too bad either. The recording, all things considered, not that long. It's the editing that takes a long time. I had done a podcast, like an audio podcast with some friends we had about a 7-year run. Yeah, a little over 7 years, talking about more like genre TV shows. Like every week we'd do that. And I'd interview like, you know, the actors and writers from those shows and stuff. And that was fun. It was good. Eventually I just needed to do something different. That took a while to edit, but nothing like what you do when you edit a show that's about comic books. It's very different than even editing a show that's about like a movie or TV or a TV show. Because then you could maybe get like a 10-second clip of something to put in, right? Right. And that's like 10 seconds you've just filmed. But if you're doing that with like a static image, you know, of a comic, now I'm going to have to like spend some time possibly cropping that, or like doing a slow zoom, maybe some transition effects, just to add a little bit of visual interest. I don't want to like have it like, oh, just, you know, discombobulating people. But it's very boring to just have just that image just there, like with nothing going on. So it takes a lot of time to do that. Yeah, yeah. It's every job has its moments, right? So that
Yep.
is the moment where it comes into is the editing. What we're doing right now, recording and talking about it, no problem.
That's the fun part. This
That's
is
the
this is
fun
a
part.
blast for me because I'm like, I don't have to worry about like anything after this. That's on
No,
Ron
hey.
and Barry.
Yeah, as soon as you're done, you have a great night, everyone. I'm out.
Let me know when it's up.
Just let me know.
Exactly. I get it though. I totally get it. So we talked about your channel. We talked about that. I've seen, over things that which I thought is really cool how you connect it with your audience. I mean, I know you talked at one point losing weight. Yeah.
That fluctuates, but obviously, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and
been a battle for me.
Yeah, it's a battle for all of us, my friend. Because
you guys look good. You guys look good to me. I don't know. We're seeing from here up.
Right. From here
my
up, we're
problem's
good. Yeah.
a little lower.
Yeah. As I said, a cheeseburger tastes way better than a salad. So
tough choice.
If they can flip this taste buds around on that with somewhere in the Matrix, I'd be okay. But that's a different story.
Plug me in.
Exactly. I'll take the blue pill. So we talked about yourself. We talked about the show. And who? See, I got so much in my head. It's like. It's getting there. I'm over, excited about the whole thing. So starting your channel, what would you say would be okay? What's the advice you would give maybe yourself? Maybe if you take yourself now and had to go back beginning when you started your channel, what are things you would have said to let's say yourself 6 years ago of, yeah, we don't need to do that, or yeah, we should do more of this?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I hadn't thought in those terms, but that's kind of a fun mental challenge. I would say a lot of the advice I'd probably be handing myself would be like, yeah, this is a good project. Go for it. Here's some more technical advice. Like here's how to get a little bit better audio and lighting. Here's how you do a thumbnail properly. Here's how you title it properly to like get people's attention. It's like really it sounds like minutia, but it really is the kind of stuff that'll like help get engagement higher and stuff like that. So it probably just mostly be technical stuff. Like, hey, instead of winging it, go ahead and write the script. It doesn't take that long. Little things like that.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
Not super exciting, I guess, but that's probably what I realistically tell myself, because I would definitely still do this. If I jump back in time 6 years, I definitely still want to do this. I enjoy doing it.
Right. And the reason I'm asking that question, I mean, first, we're, a new channel, we're starting out and kind of getting out there. But a lot of people don't realize that, what's the small things that would pay off, right, to do it. So they either look at it and they're overwhelmed, or they don't know. And just hearing from someone who's already gone through that journey on what could be some key points, who's had that level of success, I know you're humble about it, but you've had that level of success. It's definitely, in my eyes, it's kind of good knowledge and little nuggets to pass on. I'm all about passing it forward and putting it out there to others.
A regular schedule, and like be patient, but you'll build up that library. And if you're like regular, then your audience starts to expect it. They tune in, and new people can like start finding your backlog, going through that. And it's like that's some nice long tail. And then just giving like a lot of thought to making a really clean, eye-catching thumbnail that doesn't have like you usually like I have like about 5 big ideas that I want to mention in an episode. Well, I can't put all of that into a thumbnail and have it like be coherent. I have to like narrow it down to something simpler and like a really simple like sort of title. And I'll be looking sometimes at trending words on say like paid Google searches and stuff like that. And I'll say like, do any of these words make sense to just drop into my title?
Good to know. Okay.
I'll also say like there's like sort of like a negative factor that you have to acknowledge works. Like if you put words like ruined or failed or worst in a title, that tends to trigger the algorithm to recommend it to new people. I don't want to do that every week, but it's definitely a real thing. It's a little weird too, because I think if you've watched it, I try to overall do a positive show. I might critique certain things, but I try to be positive because there's a lot that I love to talk about. But if you look at like, what are my biggest views? It's like things like where I talk about like an artist that I didn't like or a storyline that I didn't like. Those are the things that get the biggest views. It's like, I'm glad to get those views, but it's like not necessarily completely accurate if somebody wants to get a sense of who I am and what show I'm doing.
Right.
But it is at least worth knowing that that's part of the game. Like,
yeah, you have to understand the rules to play ball, so to speak, right? And it might,
totally.
So I know it goes against your grain as a person, but you understand the business it is and bring those views up.
So I'll use a little bit of that, but I also tend to personally choose topics that interest me, knowing that some of them are honestly literally going to be sort of bomb. Like, I just don't really care that much because I'd rather be excited about what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But I'm friends with a couple guys that also do sort of comic book YouTubing, and they'll say like, they don't really do that. And I respect it because they're like, I don't keep like, a part-time day job like you do, Chris. This is my income. So I sort of have to talk about Spider-Man and Batman and X-Men a little bit more. I can't afford to sort of talk about an obscure, Japanese manga that was made for like teenage girls. Like I can't do that. Like, and I was like, that's fair. That's fair.
No,
I just
fair.
don't care.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, for ourselves, we don't really talk much about the big ones where, your Batman, your Spider-Mans, and we want to get more into the lesser known heroes and shine a light onto them. So yes, does it make it a little bit harder probably for us to put out some of our episodes or people to latch on? Absolutely. We understand that. But to your point, that's what we're more passionate about. I mean, everyone's talking about Batman.
If you do that and you're like consistent with what interests you, you will build the audience that you want, as compared to building an audience that like annoys you because they're like asking for something that you don't want to do. So it makes sense in that regard too.
Yeah, and we've got some, fun classics. I mean, we've talked about cartoons, we've talked about comic books. We were wrestling fans. We talk about wrestling at times.
Nice.
So that's where we mix it up, and soon enough, video games are coming too. But now moving into it, I know that you've mentioned, and thank you so much for being open and talking about tidbits and the show and all that and Comic Tropes. This is awesome for me. And now, switching in gears for half a second. I know you got a lot of Vampirella memorabilia behind you there.
Yeah.
I know you've got
a little statue there, but and then my cover. Look at it's just one cover. It's just like a bunch of copies, but it looks cool to me.
Right. Now, what our audience might not realize, and this is what we're also going to talk about, is that cover was drawn by who?
This guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
Now, we'll get into Vampirella, but first, how did you come across, or how did you, out of all the books, how did you get that cover or get the chance to do that cover? There we go. How did you get the chance?
No, that's a totally fair question. It's all thanks to the president of Dynamite, who publishes Vampirella and a bunch of other nice comics. Nick Barucci has been very kind to me. He often will drop into like some of my live streams. I've got like a second channel where I do a live show on Monday afternoons called Pros and Cons.
Right.
And I do that for the algorithm again. Because if you if I do the occasional live show on the main channel, I've realized it can sort of mess with like the views for like my edited episodes. But if I just do edited episodes on one channel and live shows on another, it goes smoother. Anyway, but he would jump in, especially after, I'll open up a little bit more than that. Towards the beginning of the pandemic, like right before everybody was like eligible to get, their vaccines and stuff like that, about literally about a week before I was eligible, I got COVID bad. I was in the hospital for like over 7 days. I was really scared. And I came out of it for a while with some bad problems. Like I just didn't have much energy, couldn't breathe that well. It was what it was. I feel good now. So I'm lucky. But Nick was jumping into the live chats and giving super chats sometimes and just saying, hey, I like what you do. Just, keep at it. And then he reached out to me one day and he said, let's see if there's room to collaborate. And I said, I would love to. I like to draw. Like, he was the one who was like, how about Vampirella? Could you come up with an idea for that? I was like, let me draw something. I'll pitch it to you, and you tell me if you think it's good enough. And he's like, yeah, let's do a campaign. So it was thanks to him, and he's got a lot of really wonderful people that work with him. Jim is a guy over there that's been helping coordinate stuff. And so, yeah, they're running the campaign, but it's up to me to sort of like, push it and market it and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I came up with a cover where I tried to put a bunch of sort of like tropes. We got like death and guest stars, like sexy women, and of course, a gorilla. Just to be clear, if you read the book, there's no gorilla in the pages. I'm just having fun. That's nice.
But that speaks so much. I saw you had a quick video explaining about the trope, that you use and influence, and I thought that was really. If you want to explain that to our audience, that'd be really.
Oh
great.
Yeah, sure. So when you look at that, that might look a little familiar to people that know comics. Like this pose is like, and I even like sort of credit it down here that it's after George Perez and John Byrne, because John Byrne did one in X-Men and George Perez did arguably a more famous one, but later in Crisis on Infinite Earths, Superman holding Supergirl. And so I'm doing that, but there's a huge history beyond just those two guys. This is based very much on one of Michelangelo's famous statues called La Pieta, where it has like, Mother Mary holding Jesus in a pose like that.
Right.
Okay.
And there's a huge history going back to like, the golden age of artists sort of doing an homage to that pose. So I'm also, what's another like sort of trope in comics, homaging other comics and famous works and stuff. So all of it together is an homage. And I did a little episode on Comic Tropes. I did that one live, ironically, but it was sort of to promote this and just sort of do something a little different. But just sort of showing tons of different covers, dozens of them throughout the years, showing that pose.
That is amazing. And Dynamite Comics, let me, I have to think that they really tap back into my childhood. Like it, with the properties they do. So, I mean, they've covered the Bionic Man, right?
Yeah.
Years ago, they did a Buck Rogers run.
I think so. Yeah. They have James Bond now.
Exactly.
Sonja, Army of Darkness.
Deja Torres, from John Carter, right?
Yep.
All that that's my childhood.
Yeah. It's cool. They obviously like they are pretty careful about which properties they go after, and they do some nice ones. Yeah.
So if you have an ear and you're talking to Nick next time, you let him know that if he feels like doing the Man from Atlantis again, I'm all in.
You guys, okay.
I'm all in. I mean, I'm not going to draw it, but I would buy it and read it.
Okay. That was Patrick Duffy, right?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Oh my God! What? That's a poll, Barry. That's a poll.
We actually covered that one on one of our earlier shows. We've talked about Man
awesome.
from Atlantis. Yeah, Man from Atlantis.
I'll watch that.
We got to talk about Logan's Run, and everyone knows Logan's Run, the TV show, but they don't know Logan's Run the movie, but they don't know Logan's Run the TV show or the 8-issue comic book from Marvel.
I know the comic, of course, but I didn't know that was a TV show.
They came up with a TV show. It ran for one season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Logan's Run has a lot of history.
All right, that's news to me. I've seen the movie, but there's something, you know what, like, I say that there's like trivia rattling around up here. I know that there's a reason why either Logan's Run 1 or 2 is super valuable, but I can't for the life of me remember it. It's something along the lines of like, a rare Marvel stamp, like one of those cutouts or something like that. Okay. Somebody's going to be able to like just go like, Chris, here's what you're forgetting, and they can Google it. But like that's something I could probably make like a whole episode about, like why Logan's Run number 1 is actually valuable. There's like a reason.
And you'll see my thumbs up going, yes. That's we've touched that, and then that's where our passion is, because that's what I grew up with. That's what I watched. So that's Patrick Duffy before Dallas.
Right.
And
we didn't have too many comic book adaptation things back then. So we'd take like whatever sci-fi they gave us. Like, and it could be garbage, but we'd be like, well, I guess this is all we get this year.
Captain America.
Yeah, the red brown Captain Americas.
Right. The trial of the Hulk. The trial of the my gosh, the helmet. Oh my gosh, the trial of the Hulk with Thor. Like there are so many small little ones. You're like, just the Fantastic Four, the famous, infamous Fantastic Four that we will never speak about again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But we take
that and run. We take it. We have to take it and run. It's basically
We
it's
had a whole
basically
TV show where, like, the most powerful thing he'd do is like break down a cardboard wall, and we were like, "Ooh, don't want to mess with that guy."
It's like, need to be home on Friday night to watch Lou Ferrigno in body paint and slippers running down the street.
It's what they could do. It's what they could do.
Or Spider-Man with like the fake spatulas over his eyes, swinging from one corner of a building to another corner of a building.
I know. And then you see like the Japanese version, you're like, you know what? They did something a lot cooler there.
Yeah.
The live action, if you've ever even seen clips, they would like have one of the like a stuntman like climbing up the side of a building, and you're like,
insane.
All right, that looks a little cooler.
Yeah, their Spider-Man was cooler, and he also got a giant robot because why?
Right. He got a giant robot.
Everyone got a giant robot.
Car. Exactly.
Forget about it.
So you've got Vampirella that you've done the issue for. So what issue is that again?
Good question. That's issue 6 of a book that's by the time this comes out, issue 1 will have come out, of Vampirella Year 1. So that's written by Christopher Priest. He's a great writer, obviously, and he's retelling Vampirella's origin. So if you don't know Vampirella, good jumping on point. If you do, hey, it's giving you sort of like more context, like a deeper version of her origin. And I'm just doing issue 6 because Dynamite likes doing variant covers for all sorts of stuff.
Nice. That is beautiful. Like, I mean, great artwork. Good on you. Congratulations on that.
It's a fun project. Thank you.
Absolutely. And speaking of Vampirella, so let's talk a little bit about Vampirella. And usually we talk more about the characters, but this time we're here. We're going to defer to the experts. So we know Vampirella was first created in 1969, right? September 1969.
Yeah, Warren Publications.
Yeah, so that's 50-something years old, just like this guy here. I was born a couple of months earlier, so I was in June 1969, and then Vampirella came out. Not saying there's one leads to the other, just saying I was there, just couldn't read it.
She's got a lot of history.
Extremely a lot of history, and that's what I like about Vampirella. I know she's gone through, and I know you've done a great video. We're going to link it down below so our fans can see it about Vampirella. She's been around for so long, and it's always like she's there, but almost out the spotlight, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you're right, because I mean, Warren Publications was respected in the 70s and stuff. They had some great artists, just to be clear, but they weren't DC and Marvel when those guys were blowing up. So yeah, she's always been just a little lower in terms of like pop culture awareness.
Right, because people always recognize the outfit.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
In like. It was either like the 90s or the 2000s. Harris Comics did a bunch of Vampirellas, and they sort of updated that. And it's not a bad look, but honestly, like, that's kind of iconic for what it is. It just is what it is. That's part of who Vampirella is.
Right. And I'm not taking anything away from that. Just how people like Vampirella, people like Power Girl, I'd say, don't change the costume. So, characters around since 1969, which I think is amazing. Still relevant up to now, still worked on by a lot of writers and artists up to now. So she survived, companies going bankrupt, different artists changing, change in her origin of story.
Yeah.
All
that stuff.
And she's still here, still standing. I think, you did one video, or you did your video when you talked about it, and you mentioned it was Frank Frazetta.
Frank Frazetta?
Thank you, Frazetta. And he has like a beautiful picture of Vampirella, of Death Dealer, of Conan the Barbarian. And in my head, I'm like, those three should always maybe be in one property together, like one book together. I could see the three of them kind of crisscrossing, maybe not even the same book, but in the same world. I like world building.
That, yeah. Well, a bunch of Frazetta's stuff is being done as a comic now by one of his granddaughter.
Yes.
Yeah. So I like that. She's keeping his legacy alive. I like that.
And anytime you play any kind of Dungeons and Dragons and you will find his art. You might not even realize it's him, but it's his artwork that's there. That one iconic picture of Death Dealer stands out the test of time, and people have it in their backgrounds and on their phones, or don't even know where it comes from. That's how influential it is that the character is there without people even realizing the backstory behind it. And I always, in my own little imagination, said, hey, well, Death Dealer and Conan in a crossover would be awesome. And you throw in Vampirella, that would be awesome. And here's my question for you, though. Which origin story do you prefer out of the two that have been presented, in a sense of her from another planet or her from a different dimension?
I like the other planet. I don't know. It's a little campy, but for me, it just works. You know, she came from a planet of Draculas, basically, and they had rivers of blood to drink from. But then her planet, they ruined it environmentally, and all the blood dried up. She came to Earth.
Oops, it came to Earth. It's better off in Earth. Oh, it's already sealed in a sippy sack. It's just called human flesh.
Yeah. But she herself is not like an evil person, so she's sort of a hero. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I find it interesting. It's like, I mean, she's a vampire, you know, she's got, does she I think she predates Blade, doesn't she?
That's an excellent question. When did Blade came out in Tomb of Dracula? I want to say 1974, but I could be misremembering that. That was Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan in Tomb of Dracula.
Yeah.
Probably came after Vampirella.
And if you look at Blade, for example, he's out there and he's got the vampire powers without the vampire weaknesses.
He does now, just to be clear. Like, if you go back to the comics, he was pretty much just a guy who hunted vampires.
Yeah, exactly.
The movie made him like that, like a daywalker, and then the comics retroactively sort of matched that origin.
Oh, really? I thought originally he was always a daywalker.
He was just a British guy that went around with a green visor, a big puffy coat, and like wooden stakes, and that was it. He was just a guy, which is kind of like, even in a way, cooler, because he was going up against Dracula, who was like mowing people down every single issue, and he's just like, I have no problem going toe to toe with you. It was kind of cool.
I've got a spike.
I love the Wesley Snipes version. I definitely think that, like, you know, it's amazing that series of movies totally gave Blade new life and, like, you know, like, re-envisioned him. But yeah, Blade has an interesting history.
Yes, he does, extremely. And I think, like, Vampirella, you know, going with that is the fact that, you know, she's got the vampire powers, no vampire weaknesses per se, generally speaking. And here she is now, all these years later, and doing, you know, making another run. I always mention, like, you know, one of two things I would say is, what I thought would be cool is kind of merge the two histories together. Make it to the idea that, oh, she's coming from another planet, and then do a twist. Well, it's not really another planet. She came from another dimension, but everyone thought it was another planet.
So you might want to actually read Year One, because while it does have another planet, it also retcons things, and now there's also a parallel dimension that her twin sister was raised in, Draculina.
All right.
So there's a little something there that like riffs on some of your ideas a little, Barry.
Yeah. Okay, it gets on both sides. All right. Oh, I like that. So I'm definitely gonna pick it up, because honestly, I think this character should do more. We'll get into it, and I want to talk more about the fan casting of it, world building, how you see it. We know there was a movie about it.
Yeah, not a great one.
And we're moving on. That's all it was.
Had the lady that played what's her name, like Melina or something from the Mortal Kombat games. Right. Was that her name?
Yeah.
The ninja.
Yeah.
The female ninja. I can't remember her name.
It was Melina. Yep. And not a knock on the actress. It's just sometimes a script didn't. No, it did not. So here's what we like to do. We like to fan cast it on the show. Okay. Now we're gonna get to this point. So, and as a guest, you know, I'm going to start with Rod. Rod's been a little bit quiet. I'm going to pick on Rod for half a second. He's like, what? Rod, Vampirella. If you had to turn around and do Vampirella today, how would you see it? Would you see it as a movie, cartoon, a limited series on a streaming service? Would you want it on like the CW and do something that way along with it?
Honestly, you know us, Chris. We like the hashtag CW and other people, because they're starting to be pulling away from you know, Arrow, Flash, Legend. They're all starting to slowly disappear. So we need to fill those gaps. So I will honestly say that, yeah, Vampirella, to me, we'll just put her on a CW. Let's give her a series, because the amount of actions and just the whole look of Vampirella, I think will look well on a series. It's not like say a movie one and done or even a 3-part movie kind of scenario. I want something where it just builds, so you can start going into, especially now if they decide to do it and they decide to follow year one and go with another planet and a parallel universe idea. Make sure you have Chris do the title entry. That's all I can say. We're just pushing for Chris. So Chris, just get your pen ready because maybe they'll call you. Call Chris, call him. But yeah, I would actually go with that. I would go with a CW run, and the person I wanted to portray her would actually be Isa Gonzalez.
Oh yeah, sure. I know who you're talking about.
We got one. Barry, you figure who she is?
No.
Okay, so no, it's okay. No, and Chris, this is how it normally works out. We would normally do that, and you may see us then start pulling it up to get visual, whatever the case may be. So I will backtrack for you to help out. So you can go the easiest and the more simplest way is Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw. So Madame M.
Oh.
The yes.
Oh.
Yes, and this is normally what happened, Chris.
Oh.
Right.
Oh.
That normally does happen.
Fist of anger.
And that sometimes does happen too. So
good call.
But basically, yeah, I mean, listen, she basically has the physique. She'll have that sexy type of attractive type of appeal to just make people like, oh, I will graciously give up my here. You want a sippy sack? Listen, I got another sippy sack. My cousin, you want another sippy sack? I'll find someone else. You want more blood? I'll find blood for you. Don't you worry. I'll find blood for you.
Sold out.
Yeah, I'm throwing people underneath the bus by any means necessary. She will just drop. She don't have to give you at that point, she will give you the look, and it won't be like the Dracula type of eyes or the hypnotizer. Like, don't worry. You don't have to hypnotize. Don't waste your energy. I'll follow you. You want to see yourself? Oh, yeah.
I'll come willingly.
She will give you that appeal. She will basically have, plus now also the fact she's on the show. She was in Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
She has the action shot. She has the physical fighting chop. So again, I want this person to have the ability to like be in a fight scene and it doesn't look like, okay, remember while the film was going, remember what I said, roll with your left. Come in slowly. I'll take it. Oh, no. Cut. No, I want someone who can just say, oh my God, I might not make it out alive. Yes, that's what I want.
Okay. Good call. Wow.
Not bad.
Wow, you came out swinging. Okay.
Told you. I used up my 4 months of talking. All now. I'm done. I'm out.
That's a strong idea. You got a strong idea. So, Chris, now, have you had to see it live action? Or not even trying to stir it. So, live action, same question.
You're just
live
saying
action.
an adaptation.
Yeah. Pardon me?
An adaptation.
Yeah.
I've got an idea. And I'm kind of going with some of the idea that Rod had there in terms of like, I don't think it's a bad idea to cast like a Hispanic actress because a lot of the early Warren issues were drawn by Hispanic artists. They were like this famous like pose here is like from a famous cover by Jose Gonzalez.
Right.
But I'm thinking a little bigger than the CW. I'm thinking movies. And so who's a movie star that's like got the look, young, well not Ana de Armas. Come on. Like she's done like the action stuff with, James Bond like a year ago or something. Oh my God, she's gorgeous. She would definitely make an amazing Vampirella. Don't know if that's what she wants, but I would love to see something like that.
Well, that's what it is on the show. They might not like it, or want it, but this is what we're going with.
Pumping it up.
All the way up to the going with, for sure. So I like that. So you're looking for a movie with her in it to play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's the only thing. Let's at least let her throw on a jacket sometimes so that the poor stunt women can like take some of those hits a little easier because Vampirella is not wearing much. God, stunt women are so impressive because they have to like take all those same hits, but with like so much less padding.
Right.
Like the
Ooh,
idea of
yeah,
like
yeah,
being in a costume like this and like doing a stair fall or something. Oh,
yeah. That would hurt. That would
It'll leave some. It'll leave some marks. Yeah, I
yeah,
understand.
that'll leave some
It makes
marks.
sense. Yeah.
All right then. Okay, I like that. I like that. See, now I'm going with a different thing. I want a series. I had two actresses in mind. So I just had to pull up the name of the other actress here. I would go for like a series on a streaming network so it can have a little bit more adult humor. I'm not saying gratuitous like scenes or whatever, but a little bit adult humor, a little bit more where the action comes in. It's still got to be light enough with the humor, the pacing of the show, but it's got to have its dark moment to kind of pull you in. So I figure you get that more with a streaming service than maybe a TV would have a little bit more leeway. And the actress that I liked is now, she's different. I'm making my decision on Selena Jade. Right now, she's a Hong Kong American singer, an actress. She plays Shadow on Arrow.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. It was like the second to last season or something like that.
Exactly. So she's also an archer herself, and she plays one of the archers on Arrow. And helps him. I guess get off the island and so forth like that. So that's who she plays. So even though she might not have the Latin roots behind her, I think it would still play in. She has the look of the character per se. There was another actress that had as my secondary list, but she wouldn't have the fighting style. But the other actress I was saying as honorable mention, it would have been Carrie Keegan.
Keegan?
Yeah, Carrie Keegan. She's more of a TV personality, but she does a lot of the like B movies or so forth. So she just did one called Vampires on a Boat. But she's got if you watch her interviews on Craig Ferguson, the older interviews, she's got a very bubbly, that kind of tongue-in-cheek humor. And I
see who you're talking about.
Right. That's who I was going with honorable mention. But as I said, I have never seen her in a full out action scene. But
Vampirella has an evil sister, so we.
That's right.
We need somebody else.
Good pull.
Yes. Yeah. So that's it. But I'm sticking with Selena Jade. That's who I'm going with as Vampirella.
All right.
And then really world build it as much as possible with the other characters that are her co-stars or love interest. Her being hunted, and I think it can really open up more. And bring this character more to the spotlight, because I think she's missing the spotlight. She's like almost there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just needs that push. And if it's going to be a studio that gets behind her or, this property to put her out there, sure. I mean, at first everyone's going to look and say, the costume? And then if you get into the rest of the storyline, you're like, oh.
But it's all about the execution, isn't it, guys? Because I mean, like, The Boys was a pretty good hit. That's also a Dynamite property. And yes. I mean, look at how well that's doing at Amazon. And that kind of changed up the story a little, but I have argued a little for the better. So it's all about the execution and figuring out like what works in this medium.
Right. Agreed.
So if Dynamite has a good relationship with Amazon, maybe Barry, your idea isn't so far-fetched,
Absolutely. Fingers crossed. So yeah. that's how our show usually goes, Chris.
I like it.
Thank you. We'll wrap this up. But thank you so much, for coming on, Chris.
My pleasure.
This really means a lot to me. So look, Rod, any last words before we kind of?
Listen, I just definitely want to say for Vampirella, it's that character is very unique, and like you said, it's something that's right there. And I just kind of look when I was talking about earlier that it actually did predate Blade. So Blade came out in like 73. She came out in 69. So at least she had a 4-year, starting run before Blade. And again, you can think maybe Blade was influenced off of her. Who knows? Well, that's another storyline. But I like the fact that you have basically an individual you would think is someone who's evil because she's from a planet full of Draculas. Who is actually someone who's like, oh, I'm on the good side. What the thanks? I'm on the good side. okay, I'll keep an eye out on you, and then realize she's actually here to help. So that's actually a good way of pitching it through. We like that underdog type of person. Someone where you think you're looking at them, you think like, I don't know. I don't really think you're an actual hero or a heroine, and realizing, oh, you are.
You're right, Rod. I mean,
Pull back
she
the
should
layers.
be dangerous. She should be dangerous. Like like she will. She will still kill her enemies and drink them. That you need to keep that danger.
Just keep that in the back of your mind.
Exactly. I agree.
Exactly.
And what about you, Chris? Any last words, Chris, before we wrap up the show tonight?
I'd love to know how you guys came up with the title for your podcast.
It was a lot of brain teasing, brain going back and forth, and we wanted to call it many things. And then we came down and it's like, oh, who's the icon? The icon is. Icon is. And we just merged those two words together to get Iconis, because we couldn't go with iconic. We couldn't go with icon. It was very more of a generic word. And people have used it before. So every time we say the icon is on the Iconis podcast, it was really merge and transform.
Right. As you can hear, when I started off, that's why I said the icon is, and then flare away.
Yeah. That's good.
That's cool.
Good. I was just curious. I appreciate it. I'll definitely be going back and watching your episode about the man from Atlantis. I had a good time talking with you guys about comics and about myself. Who doesn't like to talk about themselves? It's a pretty easy topic. But it was a really good time. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough.
We appreciate you being here. Definitely appreciate all the knowledge you've been bringing to us, man. It's been great.
Yeah, I'm having eyes-watering geek moments. So yes,
he's
Chris,
not flashing. Just watch out. He's all right.
Thank you so much. Anyone that's listening or watching this, please check out Comic Tropes. Chris has a lot of catalog on there, and new episodes coming out all the time. Please do not miss out. This has really been a passion project interview for me. Cool. So this is my short list of and I never thought this would happen. So this is wow. And we're getting close to our 100th episode. So this is coming. Yeah. This is like year 2 of us doing this.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much. So as I said, we'll wrap this show up. Everyone, thank you for tuning in and listening to the Iconis podcast. Remember, this comes out every week. You can't miss it. Put on the notifications, subscribe, rate and review, share. Don't let the show be a secret. And as I always like to say, this whole world was started with a pencil, a piece of paper, and lots of imagination. Keep on dreaming. Route!
Where's the trope? Can I hold Vampirella like this? Or should I put it over my shoulder? What's the best trope? What's the best trope, the best way to walk out?
Probably to just take your whole outfit, dump it in a trash can, and walk away from it.
Yes!
Well,
dump your headphones in the trash can and be walking away.